Hello everyone and welcome back to Sports Talk in the Burgh, your #1 source of sports talking in the Burgh. I'm Caden Hyde, surrounded by Jim Betting survivor Finn Lyons and Ron Hextall survivor Brent McGulick. And on this dreary Wednesday evening, we're here to talk some puck. As we all know, the Four Nations tournament was played this week between the USA, Canada, Finland, and Sweden instead of the annual All-Star festivities, and it was a huge success. But it wasn't without issue. As Florida Panthers star Matthew Tkachuk got injured in the final, the tournament has had no impact on the NHL season. And can the NHL keep the tournament from becoming stale? What are your guys' takes on this? Brett, we'll start with you.
I mean, feasibly, you obviously can't do this tournament every year. Like you said, Matthew Tkachuk got injured. We obviously know what happened to Charlie McAvoy. But this needs to be brought back at some point. You saw the eyes that went on during this tournament and how crazy it got. And sure, it's an exhibition tournament, but you saw how the fan base was into it when it came to booing the other's national anthems. That really just, and everything, and it brought so many more eyes to hockey. It really set the tempo for what this could all be. And also, when are you ever going to get a power play consisting of Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, and Nathan McKinnon again? You got to keep this going at some point.
Exactly. I mean, it was the most viewed hockey product outside of the Stanley Cup playoffs. 16.1 million people watched. I mean, that's absurd. Gary Bettman said that this isn't going to be like an every year thing. They're going to go back to the World Cup of Hockey, which they did in 2016, and the Olympics that are coming next year. So is the Four Nations a sustainable thing? Technically not, but this international play, like the World Cup of Hockey, which again they're bringing back, is definitely sustainable. I mean, people don't ever complain about Olympic injuries because who cares? They're just Olympic injuries. People yearn for best of best play, and we saw that here. It was amazing. It was electric, and I think coming up, the All-Star game is cooked. They're talking about not even bringing it back next year. So.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys, if the Four Nations does come back in the future, do you think it'll be the same Four Nations? Do you think maybe you could throw in like a Russia in there? Maybe a Czechia?
Yeah, I think that's a bit above our pay grade.
It is a bit above our pay grade, but if we had to, if it was a fantasy, say, if we were Gary Bettman and we could put in whatever we'd like, I think you got to make this either the 5 nations or the 6 nations. Throw in Russia in there, Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, what more do I need to say? Obviously, there are players that I'm missing, but just Alex Ovechkin is the only thing that I need to say to get you convinced on Russia, right? Maybe a little bit of maybe some Czech players in there as well. I think you could expand this to even more teams and make that round robin even a little bit longer. And that final game is going to have even more stakes to it because these teams went through even more to try to get there.
And yeah, the World Cup of Hockey that they're going to bring back every 2 years now, they said they're going to have 8 different nations in there. We'll see if Russia makes it. It really depends on some political things that we're not going to discuss in this show. But there's a lot of good hockey nations that were left out. I mean, Germany, Latvia, Czechia, they have some great NHL players. And some nations are on the rise that we didn't get to see. And we haven't seen these players get to represent their country in almost 10 years. So it will be great when it comes back, and we'll have to see.
All right, moving on. While Team Canada won the first place prize at the Four Nations, the good old red, white, and blue came up short to those maple syrup-consuming Mounties. With the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan only a year away, what does Team USA need to do to overcome the Great Northern Hurdle? Finn.
I mean, simply pick a better team. The whole thing with picking all these washed-up Rangers and Islanders players is ridiculous. I mean, Miller, Trocheck, Nelson, Kreider had 1 point combined. What are we doing? Leaving off Tage, Thompson, Cole Caulfield, Nick Robertson, Clayton Keller. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And we saw the defensive play out there. The depth they brought when there was injuries was inadequate. I mean, John Carlson was left off the roster. Lane Hudson's only 20. He's been great. You got to pick a better team, not this gritty, no, they kill penalties. Who cares? It's an international tournament. There wasn't even that many power plays anyways. You pick the best players, and you pick them to win. You got to get rid of these washed grit grinders.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's exactly what they need to do to win. I think you got to play with that grit. I think that this team showed up. Right? They went undefeated in the round robin. They won 2 games from regulation, and they won 1 in overtime.
They lost.
Yeah, in the round robin they won. And they beat Canada in that time. They held them to 1 goal. And they put up 6 goals against Finland. I really honestly don't think that the roster is the problem for this team. I think it's how they play Canada. You're not going to beat Canada by playing pretty. You just can't. They're too skilled. You can't play a pretty game against Canada. But the U.S. played that grit, and they played an ugly game. And that's how they beat Canada in that first game. They won 3-1 that game.
And then they played gritty anyways, and they still lost. The only reason they were in this tournament is because of Hellebuck. You don't have the best goalie in the world on your team. You're not even making it to that gold medal game.
That's where that comes. They drafted the right guy, and they were able to play in front of him. I think that if they just keep playing that gritty style against this Canadian team like they did in that first game, they kind of stepped away from that a little bit. Again, injuries were there. They didn't have Charlie McAvoy. In that first game, he had 4 huge hits, and sure, that may not be a stat on that stat sheet when you see it at the end of the game, but that comes in huge whenever it comes to rallying guys up. And obviously, the 3 fights in 9 seconds really set that tempo of that first game and gave the U.S. that advantage. I really think if they stick to that gritty play style, they can go out with the same team they went on the 4 Nations and maybe have a chance of winning this
3
thing.
fights in 9 seconds is ridiculous. Someone had to say it. It's ridiculous. I don't care. I don't want to see it. I want to see goals. I want to see assists. I want to see plays that actually matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it gets you riled up. Oh, I love a good fight. I don't care. I love a good goal. That's what I like. I like winning, and winning. How do you win? You score more goals.
Or you hold them to less goals. Obviously, you have to score more.
And you have to score more goals.
You can win a 2-1 game. A 2-1 game is possible to win.
And that's more goals than that.
Let me get your thought process here.
Okay.
So this USA team that plays with a lot of grit, they come up short, and you think the only way for them to win is to play the same way again, to double down.
They do. It's possible whenever they have everybody in. Obviously, they're missing Charlie McAvoy, which is a huge play. Jake Sanderson stepped in, which should have been Quinn Hughes. Obviously, there was some.
And then another young player that again. All right, guys.
We can see this is a contentious issue, but moving on. At the 4 Nations, we saw some of the best hockey players in the world go at it. We were able to see superstars Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Austin Matthews, the Tkachuk, and Connor Hellebuck all share the ice at one time. But of this pool of all-time talent, who rose above and became a legend? Finn, we'll start with you.
So I mean, it's Crosby is McDavid is the best player. I have Crosby on my mind. Maybe he is the best player, but Crosby, listen, he's generational. He was the best player in the league. McDavid, though, has elevated above anyone else. He doesn't have the championship, sure, but he has the individual awards. He has the points. He has 73 points in 51 games this season. He's a constant 120-point goal scorer. He had 5 points in the 4 Nations. He won the Conn Smythe last year, even though he lost the Stanley Cup final. I mean, not many players do that, and he's the new Crosby. I mean, Crosby was the old generation. McDavid has ushered in a new generation, and he's clearly risen above.
You know, I have sort of a reputation on this show of maybe being a little bit of a Pittsburgh bias. I've stated in previous shows, maybe the last time I was sitting on this desk, that Chris Boswell was the MVP. And, you know, I'm going to stick with the same thing here. How can you not still look at Sidney Crosby as one of, if not the best player in the National Hockey League right now? You saw it in the 4 Nations. He really helped. He was the captain of that team. He helped get that team to that win. Both McDavid and Crosby had 5 points in the 4 Nations tourney, and it's just I don't like it's insane just what Crosby's doing. And he's 37 years old, 60 points in 58 games. Obviously not as much as McDavid, but if you think about it, McDavid is 4th in the league in points, right? Crosby's 21st. Nothing too crazy, but. Obviously, you can see Crosby with 18 goals and a bunch of assists. The assists come in, he constantly elevates the guys around him. Raquel and Rust, the guys on his line, both on pace for having career seasons right now. And Crosby's carrying this awful Penguins team to, sure, they're horrible. They're 8th in the Metro, 6th to last in the league. But without Sidney Crosby, this is a bottom 2 worst team in the league, and I really think he helps this team.
I don't want to take away from Crosby. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying he's the old guard. McDavid, it's McDavid's time. It's the young guns' time, and they're both incredible players. And right now, Crosby, yeah, sure, he has all the championships above McDavid. Obviously, we know what McDavid's not done in the playoffs, but he's the generational player of now, and that's really what my argument boils down to.
How can you get better than the old dog when he's still playing in the league? I mean, you're comparing the best guy in the league to another great guy in the league, Sidney Crosby. How can this dude not be the best right now if Connor McDavid's trying to play up to that style, you know?
I mean, he's outplayed him the past 5 years. I mean, that's what you got to look at.
You never know.
All right, now don't go anywhere. Sports Talk in the Burgh will be back after these messages.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Freedom. It's at the core of who we are. The freedom to live without fear, to jog where we please, to wear a hoodie. The freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now anything but lonely.
We have this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
We discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure
Pure love.
love.
All right, now welcome back to Sports Talk in the Burgh. For the next part of our show, we're beginning a new segment, Sports Talk in the Burgh, inspired directly from our very messed up economy. The gist of this one is that I'll give our lovely panelists here something hockey related, and they'll explain what their market looks like. Without further ado, let's begin. Starting with Pittsburgh Penguins head coach Mike Sullivan. Mike has been the head coach since December 2015 and oversaw 2 Stanley Cup runs in his first 2 seasons. But playoff success has been almost non-existent since then. Brett, how's the market looking for Sully?
Caden, this was a really tough one for me here, but I think that the market is starting to seep down a little bit for Mike Sullivan. I mean, honestly, he's a great coach. I think of him very similar to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. He's a great coach. He's the Team USA coach for a reason. But his style just doesn't work for this Pittsburgh Penguins team right now. They're a little bit too old. He likes to favor those younger guys. And he's 23, 28, and 9 right now. He's at 57 blown leads as a team. This team is just not making these changes they need to do. And overall, he's 386, 281, and 81 as a head coach. And sure, he's had the most head coach wins as a Penguins head coach, but most of those wins were in the past. Right now, this team is just struggling. And I think when it comes to a rebuild, which this team needs to do, you got to start with that big asset in Mike Sullivan. I think it's time to just move on from him.
All right, now coming up next, we have the 2025 Stanley Cup. Can the final raise the massive bar set by the Four Nations, Finn?
Yeah. The hockey is at the highest interest rate it's ever been since 1994. And I go back to the iconic Sports Illustrated cover, why hockey's hot and the NBA is not. Hockey is on the rise, and people want to see Stanley Cup action. They watch it every year, no matter what. Without this tournament, they watch it, and there's more teams, there's more competition, there's more games. It's going to be electric. And look, there's no clear favorite. I know the betting odds, what they say, Edmonton. There's no clear favorite in my opinion. It's going to be electric this offseason, and you're going to see some of the most intense hockey that you've seen since forever, honestly.
This is supposed to be a debate show, but I agree with you 100% here, Finn. I think this only put more eyes on the sport, and the greatest thing about hockey is that it's a 7-game series. It's not a 1-game thing, so anything can happen any given series. And you could see a crazy matchup in the Stanley Cup Final, something you never dreamed about before. I really do think that this elevated hockey as well, but I know I was really invested after the Four Nations. I was ready to watch even more. So I think this is going to make it even more fun.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I mean, the Four Nations is probably the best thing the NHL has done in numerous years, in my opinion, at least, and I believe we all agree with that opinion. I'm excited. Like the first time in a long time, with the Penguins not being a contender, I'm excited for the Stanley Cup. I'm excited for the playoffs.
And I mean, look, if you're expecting every regular season game to be as good as the Four Nations, that's on you. That's just on you.
Yeah.
Get ready for the playoffs. We're going to have some good regular season games, but we're going to have even better, more intense playoffs than we've seen in past years.
All right, continuing on, we have Pittsburgh Penguins President of Hockey Operations, Kyle Dubas. Dubas inherited an aging roster with bad contracts and almost no future picks from Ron Hextall in 2023, and has made some moves to get the Pens some future draft capital and flexibility moving forward. Brett, are you buying into Dubas in the future, or will he flame out?
Yes, I 100% am buying into Kyle Dubas in the future. He's already done so much for this team, like you mentioned in your reads. He was handed a dumpster fire. Ron Hextall may have been employed for the Philadelphia Flyers to come in and hold it and make this team the worst thing it could possibly be. He's been acting GM since 2023, and the Penguins, they have 30 picks in the next 3 drafts. That's absurd. And 2025 will be the first year where the Pens have 2 first-round draft picks since 2012. This man has been cooking, no fire in sight, just straight heat, and I am fully buying into this guy.
And look, he's done what he's asked to do. He got put in a terrible position, like you said, but he was brought in to build a competitive team. He tried his best. I mean, in my opinion, his really only terrible move was the Carlson trade, but who could have really seen that the Penguins would have fallen off that
He had
bad?
100 points the season before.
And look, the team now, he has sort of transitioned this team into a rebuild. They've acknowledged it. This team that he's constructed is really the best of what he's got. And look, like you pointed out, the draft picks, that's more draft picks than I've seen the Penguins make in my entire life. I mean, so he's been doing his job.
Now, I will agree, Dubas has done a fantastic job in trying to turn the Penguins around, but I kind of get conflicting messages from what he's trying to do currently, because you have the big 3, the core 3 that's been around since 2005 in Malkin, Crosby, and Letang. They're all in their late 30s, and I feel like what Dubas is doing is, for lack of a better term, kind of giving up. Like, if you have 3 players who are still, in their own ways, really good, like Crosby's still like a top 10, top 5-ish player in the league. Malkin is still a decent second-line center, and Letang, he's getting older. But I just feel like going all in isn't the best thing to do, but I feel like trading away all your assets for draft capital might be the worst way to go.
And look, we're about to talk about a team who traded away all their assets for draft capital. You got to be careful, and I think Dubas is a great GM, and we'll see if he can do it, and we'll see if it's really up to the management, the ownership group. If they were going to let him.
How could you consider him giving up when he's trading for young guys and draft capital? He's looking towards the future. That's what you want, right? When this team is not going to win this year, there's no way this team. They might be the last in the league the way they're going down right now. They just lost 6-1 to the Flyers. Sorry, Flyers fans, but the Flyers. And obviously this season's a dud, right? So what's the problem with looking towards the future?
Like, there's no strict issue with looking towards the future. Like, I don't think it's the worst decision in the world, but when you have your franchise players who are all bought in, none of them have indicated at all that they want out of Pittsburgh. They've all bought in to stay with the franchise, but they haven't really. But I feel like punting away with the last couple of years of their careers might not be the best decision, just to give them an honor on the way out. But moving on, as Finn hinted to a little bit before, next up, and finally, for Sports Talk in the Burgh, we have the Buffalo Sabres, who, to no one's surprise, have been absolutely terrible this year. Is this another example of the Pegula's incompetence, or is there a light at the end of a very long and very bleak tunnel? Finn, we'll start with you.
It is impressive to not make the playoffs for 14 years when half of the teams in the league make the playoffs. The problem is Terry Pegula, their owner. He gets his grimy little hands all over this roster. And he has meddled and meddled and meddled. And he hires these think tank guys who just, yes sir, yes Terry. And so every year they have one big problem. Last year is their defense. And what do? They overcorrect. Every year they overcorrect to solve one issue, and that leaves something else on the table. Last year their defense, they trade their top six center, second line center, Casey Milstead, for a defenseman. Now the Sabres, their center depth is terrible. I mean, Tage Thompson's the only one there. Goaltending was an issue. We overcorrected for that. The offense suffered. The defense suffered. So they'll only ever pay 3 or 4 guys to play on this team. So the rest you're left with the bargain bin guys that are a dime a dozen. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Part of me feels bad for the Sabres, but also as a struggling fan to another struggling fan, it's never easy to see your team like this, right? It's hard when it's difficult when you see a team like this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I just can't see a world that the Sabres can turn this around. I mean, talent after talent is just going away with this team. Like, for example, Jack Eichel. I'm sorry. Somebody had to say it. Fortunately, I had to be the bad guy here. But you see a guy who goes away from this team and finds immediate success and is kind of hating over the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, how can, as a fan, how can you root for this team?
I mean, it's literally every single player. Eichel, O'Reilly, Reinhart, Evan Rodriguez, Brandon Montour, Robin Leonard. The list goes on and on. I mean, it's just ridiculous that they can't build something successful. Since Terry Pegula's taken over, the highlights of being a Sabres fan have been missing the playoffs by 10 points in Jack Eichel's rookie year, a 10-game win streak where we missed the playoffs that season, firing a coach after 13 straight losses in a row, missing the playoffs by 1 point 2 seasons ago. That's it. That's all I've had as a Sabres fan. It's ridiculous, and we see it in the player polls that just came out recently. The players think that this organization is a joke. The players don't want to come here, not because of the city, not because of the fans, because of the management, and that's the problem. That nothing's ever going to change until Terry Pegula is out of office. I mean, you see every player that's left here, but Eichel has said, I regret that I couldn't do it for the team. The city is great, the fans are great. I don't know. Something's got to give.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that the Sabres can be bad forever, because even just laws of averages, they have so much draft capital. I mean, the Cleveland Browns have made the playoffs. The Sacramento Kings have made the playoffs. Even the Pittsburgh Pirates every once in a while will field a decent roster and make it in. Like, is it possible for the Sabres to build a dynasty?
No,
I don't think so.
They're going to be bad forever.
But there's probably a year where they can make it in as like a non-division winner. Like, in a way, like it's possible, but I just don't. Like you said, very, very bleak.
This team is going to be bad forever. I'm sorry, guys. It just is.
Yeah, coming up after the break, our very own Brett McGulick will try to fix one of the worst situations in hockey, so don't go anywhere.
Do you want to meet a family with a transgender kid? Here we are. Max loves to do backflips. Max loves to play his ukulele. Max loves to just be a kid and just be himself. When I found out I was pregnant, all I really wanted was a happy, healthy, whole child. And that's what I got. I think it's really important for people to know that trans kids don't have a political agenda. They are just kids. Like any parent, we love our kids unconditionally, and we will never stop fighting for them. Stand with us. Protect our families.
Wait! Not in the toilet!
No, don't do that. No.
Don't hit your brother! Oh!
Not again.
What did I tell you about playing in the mud?
Raffy, not so close to the pool. Wait!
Frankie, Tabby, what are you doing? We told you never to touch the gun!
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
You could have hurt yourself!
Safely store your guns, unload, lock, and away from ammo.
Welcome back to Sports Talk in the Burgh. There are 3 things that are certain in life: traffic on the Parkway, the Steelers owning the Browns, and Brett McGulick being a big Pens guy. Unfortunately for Brett, the Penguins have not been great this year, to say the least. But don't worry, he knows just what to do to bring Lord Stanley's Cup back to the Burgh. Brett, take it away.
Well, Pittsburgh Penguins fans, we've got ourselves into a bit of a situation. The team has been on a roller coaster since those 2 Cup wins, and right now, well, it's more like a broken elevator. You've got the high-octane offense, occasionally, but the defense and the goaltending, oh boy, not so much. But fear not, we are here to fix the team in 3 easy steps. You ready? Let's go to work. Step 1, you gotta fix the blue line. Let's be real. Right now, it looks like the Penguins defensemen are more interested in hosting a charity event for the opposing team's forwards. Yikes. To turn this ship around, we need solid defense. These odd man Russians and defensive collapsins have been killing this team. And 9 times out of 10, it starts with one man, Erik Karlsson. Sorry. For example, the game against the Capitals this past Saturday. 1 second period collapse changed the entire game after some solid hockey from the Penguins offense. The other problem in that game has, as well as the entire season, the goaltending. If you look at those stats, the Penguins have been giving up 4.02 goals against average. Earlier in the year, Tristan Jarry, he played himself out of the city. While Alex Nedeljkovic has been more of an offensive asset with a goal and assist this year in a game than a goalie. In the game against the Capitals, he posted 13 saves on 18 shots, but his backup has not been much better. In his most recent start, Joel Blomqvist posted a 71% save percentage, stopping 15 of 19 shots. Oh, I forgot to also mention that Nedeljkovic has more points this season than Ryan Graves. With a goalie struggling to stop a beach ball and the Penguins defense constantly forgetting what team they play for, it may be time to revamp the entire blue line. Let's move on. Step 2, sell, sell, sell. Everybody. Okay, so now we're talking. This is the part where the Pittsburgh Penguins go into the full, let's look towards the future mode. It's time to trade everyone who's not down for the long haul and for some young guns and some juicy draft picks. Who goes? Let's start with Evgeny Malkin. We love him, and this would personally kill me as a #1 Malkin guy, but the return could maybe be something special. And Letang as well. I mean, we'll always have those Stanley Cups, but those contracts can be too hard to handle for those young guys. If you can get some first-round picks and a couple of top prospects for them, it's a win. But one guy we will never be sad about leaving is the guy I mentioned earlier, Erik Karlsson. Karlsson has been more of an asset to the other team than the Penguins, so he should be the first one to go. But look, we need to rebuild this thing from the bottom up. Everyone should be on the chopping block unless your name is Sidney Crosby. With some of those assets, we can snag a new NHL-ready defenseman or a center for top 6 potential. Maybe even a future superstar who could lead the Penguins to the next generation of greatness. Pittsburgh average age is creeping higher, and their core has been around there for a while. Let's grab those fresh draft picks to the future-proof and take the team where we're going there. Now, step 3, the last one I have. It's time to tank for that sweet #1 overall pick. Okay, now here's where things get really fun. Yes, I'm asking you to embrace the tank. It's like that time you ate an entire pizza by yourself and told everyone it was just one slice. This time for the greater good. By the end of the season, we want the Penguins to be so bad they're almost good again. We need that top pick to land a player like another Connor Bedard, Malcolm Celebrity, or even another Sidney Crosby. This team has done it many times, and they can do it again when they pick #1, and that's the first step into bringing a new era of Penguins hockey. Think of it as the ultimate plot twist, a few months of pain for a few years of glory. And just like that, in 3 easy steps, the Penguins will be back on track. Sure, it's a little painful now, but the future is looking bright. With a new course of young studs and a revamped defense, that fresh #1 overall pick, the Pittsburgh will be ready to chase another Stanley Cup. Maybe even get a laugh out of it in a few years when we're talking about this small tank. And we're sipping on champagne on our paradise float.
So Brett, I want to just poke a few holes in your how to fix the Penguins. First of all, ain't nobody taking any of your contracts on the Penguins. Besides Karlsson, who's been in trade talks, who else are you going to trade? I mean,
you have guys like Rickard Rakell. He's been the top scorer for the Penguins this year. I forgot to mention him in my read, but he's a guy that you could get for a good amount of money, or a good pick.
Rickard Rakell holds a special place in my heart. It might just be personal, but every single Penguins game I've been to this year, he's scored.
He's a good player, but whenever you're embracing the tank, like I said, you have to get rid of those top guys. That's going to hurt me too, but it just has to happen.
That is the one thing that the Penguins do have going for them is whenever they're bad, they just somehow seem to get that first overall pick. It's crazy how those lottery balls bounce, you know?
I think it's going to be hilarious whenever the Penguins tear it all down, rebuild, and then are somehow make the playoffs sooner than the Buffalo Sabres.
Yep.
It is going to happen. It will happen.
We'll let it be a cautionary tale of how not to do a rebuild, trading literally anything that has value to your franchise.
Yeah, I also just don't think the Pens are gonna trade away Letang and Malkin. I think they're just gonna let them play out the last couple of years of their career.
It's more of they can't.
I agree.
They have no movement clauses, and they haven't indicated that they're willing to move them.
But if you can do it, I think it's easy to. I think you should at least consider it for sure.
Yeah, but I feel like that step would have been taken a couple of years ago when they still had some kind of value.
They wouldn't have re-signed them at that point.
Yeah. But anyway, we're getting close to the end of our show here. This has been Finn. This has been Brett. I'm Caden. Thank you for being with us. And if we don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.